Colin Rallings, thanks for joining us on the Calling Peston podcast.
Good to be here.
First of all, just explain your involvement, before we get into the exit poll and how it works, your involvement in the exit poll.
Well, I've now been involved in, this will be the 8th general election going back to 1992 here at ITV News with their exit polls. But in fact, the ITV News exit polls go back a lot further than that, right back to 1979. So over a 40-year period, and the bongs go at 10 o'clock, listeners and viewers have been able to hear what we think the result is going to be before any constituencies have declared.
Yeah.
How does it work? How do you actually get to that?
Well, the methodology has changed over the years, actually. It began by trying to take a sample of polling stations in marginal seats on the grounds that the marginal seats were where the election was won and lost. And because election results always differ one from the other, we kept having to go back to different places and different marginal seats in order to get a decent sample. And mainly it seemed to work, a couple of embarrassments along the way, but mainly it seemed to be okay. But then in 2005, ITV joined with the BBC, and then in 2010, Sky came in. So it's now really the broadcaster's exit poll, effectively. And matching that period, the methodology has changed a bit. So what we now try to do is we don't so much concentrate on marginal seats, but what we do is we go to places where we've been before. So the important thing is not so much how marginals are behaving, but how are those people that we interviewed, or people in the same areas that we interviewed 2 years ago or 4 years ago, elections coming along so frequently these days, how are they behaving this time in exactly the same polling stations, in exactly the same towns and villages as we were at 2 years ago, 2017, the last time? What's the difference between how they're behaving today on election day and how they did last time? And in that way, we can look at changes for the various parties. And from that, we try to project how many seats each party is going to win.
How many people are working on this at the course of the day?
Well, there are, that's a very good question. There are something over 140 polling stations, which sounds a lot, but isn't actually a lot, because there are 40,000 polling stations across the country.
That's not 140 seats, that's 140 polling stations.
140 polling stations out of 40,000, but we're in 140 out of 650 constituencies that you could say. Yeah. And in each of those polling stations, there are people from the polling companies who work on a shift basis. They interview voters as they come out of the polling booth. There is someone there to click, so we make sure that we have a random choice every 12th or 15th or whatever it is, person who comes out of the polling station is asked to contribute to the exit poll. And one of the key things about the exit poll, I mean, if you've ever been involved in opinion polls, they ask you all kinds of things about your opinion and your views, and sometimes you may be a little nervous about telling people, especially if it gets onto sensitive subjects. But in the exit poll, the whole point is you simply say to somebody, right, here is a ballot paper. All we're asking you to do is to fill it in exactly the same way as you filled it in the polling booth, and then please don't show it to me.
Yeah,
don't show it to me.
I didn't know that.
Put it in this ballot box.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And so it's a completely confidential, completely private process. And then every hour or so, the people who are there working for the polling companies, they take those ballot boxes away and replace it with another one, obviously, and then the votes in there are counted and sent through centrally. And that's how it takes place all through the day, from the time polling opens at 7 to the time polling shuts at 10 o'clock.
Do you try and get an even number of voters in each constituency? Because you're in 140 constituencies, you're saying. Do you tend to have some with more, some with less? Are you looking for a golden number and then you go, right, we've got X number, let's go?
No. We never go. We never go. And so therefore what happens is that because you have this sampling frequency, we make a kind of guess about what the turnout is going to be. And we say that probably over those 140,000 polling stations, we need to have come out at the end of the day with somewhere in excess of 25,000 respondents votes. So that's more than 150 in each particular place. So it's quite a significant fraction of the people who actually have voted there. And of course, if we get our sampling fraction wrong, if more people than we think are going to vote, then you have a very high number of respondents, which is good, which is what happened in 2017, when I think more than 30,000 people responded to the exit poll. One of my nervousnesses about this time is because it's winter, it's going to be dark quite early in the evening, it may be raining, it may be horrible. People may not turn out, though I think that's probably less of an issue. It's more to the fact they'll be in their coats, they'll have their umbrellas up, they'll have the hoods up, and they won't want to stop and talk to exit pollsters. But the pollsters they're experts in this kind of thing. They know how to encourage people to respond to them, and we just must hope that it works in the same way.
How nerve-wracking is it from 10 through to about 4 in the morning after your exit poll has come?
Well, it's nerve-wracking then, of course, but actually where the real story takes place is actually in a secret location in central London, where there's about a dozen people congregate, hear the results coming in from the various stations around the country, and then try to model what that means in terms of the votes.
That's the hard bit.
Across the country. That's the hard bit. That's the, if you like, that's the sciencey bit. And from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, somebody comes in and says, right, okay, this is what we're seeing so far. And people either go, yeah, that's what we expected, or sometimes their draws drop. But equally, you have to be a bit careful. In 2010, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the first reveal from the exit poll suggested that David Cameron would get an overall majority at that election. And we went, oh, well, maybe not. We're a bit sceptical. And then, of course, towards the end, the exit poll that was actually broadcast at 10 o'clock said that he was going to be the largest party in a hung parliament. And indeed, that's, of course, what actually happened. He went into the coalition with the Lib Dems, and the rest, as they say, is history. And the reason for that is because the traditional view is that Labour voters vote on their way home from work, vote later in the evening. It's making everybody sound very stereotypical, whereas Conservatives, more elderly people who are not working, perhaps vote during the day. So it wasn't a great surprise that the Conservative overall majority in 2010 became a hung parliament by 10 o'clock at night. But in the last 2 elections, we haven't seen that happen at all.
Really?
What's been the picture at 4 o'clock has tended also to be the picture at 10 o'clock, which has given us a long time to look at what's going on under the surface, and has increasingly enables us to do things like actually say something in a bit more detail about particular areas or particular kinds of people. So last time, for example, we spotted from the exit poll, from a very comparatively small number of places in London, for example, that Labour was likely to do very well in London, and lo and behold, they did do very well in London. So there are nuances that you can begin to try and pull out, but it all depends, like every single opinion poll, it depends upon the accuracy of the input data. If your sample is good, if the people that you've talked to really are a sample of everybody that you're interested in, then you get a decent opinion poll. If for whatever reason the sample is not so good, then the opinion poll itself may go to pot, frankly.
And then it moves. At what point in the day does it move from this team of 12 really clever people working out the modelling, and you settle on what you think, right, this is what we think the result is? At what point do you go, right, that's our finish point? And then at what point do you then tell the broadcasters? Because we find out at 10 o'clock as the viewer, and the vast majority of people find out at 10 o'clock. But so who then starts to find out as the night goes on?
There is a kind of, there's a 20 to 10 seems to be the time. By 20 to 10, I will probably be back at the ITV studios. Colleagues working at the BBC and Sky will be similarly in contact with their own editorial teams.
Everyone's trying to read your body language as you walk in the building.
and then because these things are terrible and market sensitive, of course, these days as well, very market sensitive in a way that 30 years ago they weren't in quite the same way because of instant market movements and adjustments. A small number of people are told because graphics need to be prepared, the presenters need to know, although there is one well-known television presenter who doesn't like to know, who hears it at the same time as the viewer sitting at home.
Wow.
And it's a he reacts accordingly. But in most cases, the editorial teams like to know so they can prepare the graphics, they can prepare the story.
So at what point do you gather these small group of people in a room, literally 20 minutes before?
20.
And so they have 20 minutes then to kind of get their stuff into gear.
To digest it.
So in terms of, obviously, we're with an ITV here, so I take it it'd be literally a handful of people.
Literally.
And they're told not to tell anyone else.
think last time it grew to perhaps 2 hands.
Okay.
But if you think about it, there's the presenter and there's the graphics people
Yeah.
and the editor of the program, and you soon
people want to be in that room,
you
don't
soon
they?
begin people do want to get in the room, and so anything going on here, they just sort of come in and but I think there are always concerns about security,
Of course.
and I think the numbers of people are kept as small as possible, and for that reason.
In 2017, the exit poll was this surprising moment for a lot of people as we found out that Theresa may have gone on to lose a majority, which she did in the end. When you're in that room and you've told those 2 hands of people, are you then saying, we've got a big bombshell coming here, go out of that room and pretend like nothing has happened?
That's exactly what you have to do. And for me personally, the worst thing is that the program goes on the air at 9:55, and for a minute and a half in the 5 minutes before 10 o'clock, Tom quite understandably asked me some of the questions that you've been asking me. How's the exit poll done? Where's it taking place? How many people involved? Is this a decent enough sample to tell how the whole country is? All these very sensible, very pertinent questions. And I know the result, he knows the result, but we have to put it in the most kind of neutral terms.
Yeah, of course.
So, which can be hard, and because you're always wanting not to detract from that moment at 10 o'clock when you go, and that's when people either go, yeah, that's what we always knew, or bloody hell. No.
In terms of you mentioned earlier, Shehab asked you about the nerves. At 10 o'clock, then that's when it's like, at that point, it is just a projection. It's an exit poll, but it's still a poll. How do you actually pray that's true? Do you sit there? Because obviously, in a weird way, your job is to be as neutral as possible. It's the data. If the data is wrong, that's what the data says. But is part of you thinking, I really hope for the reputation here of this exit poll, we are right?
Of course,
you know what I mean?
Of course it is. And for every election since 1997, it has been virtually right. It's told the story. It's sometimes got it. It didn't say, for example, that Cameron's going to win overall majority in 2015, but it went nudging up from quite an early stage in the evening. So of course you hope it's going to be right. You hope it's telling the story, but from the point of view of interest, you don't want people to say, right, that's and go to bed. You want to encourage them. There'll always be some surprise results. People will be interested in personalities this time. Perhaps they'll be interested in those MPs who have changed party, for example, and how they're going to do standing often in their own constituencies or another constituency. So there's always some kind of interest in it. But you need a few results to come in, and you especially need results to come in the party's target seats before you can begin to change what you say. But what, again, we do here at ITV News, we model the real results coming in, and gradually the real results overtake from the exit poll. And then later in the evening, what we will say to you, right, we're no longer using our exit poll. We are now using a projection by ITV News based on the results we've had, modelled according to the way we think these things should be designed. But again, for the last few years, that hasn't been a great dramatic moment because it hasn't said anything very different to what the exit poll is going to say. But you have to prepare that in case it may be. And you say, right, well, but on the other hand, if what I do has been done properly, if what Tom does, what Jane Green does, has been done properly, we will have been pulling viewers in that direction already.
Yes.
Because you say, that looks as if the exit poll may not have quite got it right in Scotland, or Labour are doing a little better than the exit poll suggested that they might do in the north, or whatever it might be. And although we're still stuck with the exit poll because there aren't enough results to change it in a statistical sense,
you're trying to add that nuance to it.
We hope that with the narrative, the direction of travel, you've already learnt about from what we've been saying. And so when the reveal that the story is a little different to what it seems at 10 o'clock comes, you're not going to be surprised because you've stayed with us through the evening.
Again, back to 2017, where the exit poll was such a shocking moment. Are there moments when you're working out throughout the course of the day that you just think, this can't be right? There's no way this is where we're heading, especially 2017, where no one thought.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think our first reaction when we heard the first reveal at 4 o'clock in the afternoon was, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
Can you go? There's a team of statisticians.
It's a bold prediction, isn't it?
Yeah, the team of statisticians who sort of who work behind the scenes on this. It's not simply the people you see commentating on the election on the various TV programs. And you say to them, are you sure? Have you tested this? Can you check that isn't happening? Do we know enough about what the Lib Dems are doing? Have we got enough sampling points in Wales to be confident about what's happening in Wales? So yeah, part of my role during the day is to interrogate the statisticians to make sure they're checking all the correct variables, that they're modelling it in a particular way. But in 2017 we went, nah, come on. Because even though the Tory leading the opinion polls was falling back for the last couple of weeks of the campaign, the notion that she was going to completely lose her majority was just, nobody had thought that might happen.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. Honestly, thank you so much for coming in and talking us through it.
It's good.
In your business, you're not going to be out of work, are you? 3 elections in 4 years.
Well, no, but my wife is very cross that we haven't been able to, fix on a decent long holiday. Can't go away, then might be an election. Can't go away, then might be an election. So
I don't think we can guarantee there won't be another one.
No.
2024.
No, March 2020 maybe. You never know.
Absolutely. Colin Rallings, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming in.